Um, here's the deal. First, I'm not a doctor, but I can
Yes.
tell you my experience.
Yes.
My experience is sometimes, being in a depressive state is very uncomfortable because you don't know how to explain how you feel. You don't feel like you can do anything. You don't feel like you can go to work. You don't feel like you can make a difference. You don't feel like anything. And everything is almost like it's like a loop. If you
Mm.
if your brain says I can't do XYZ, the body typically follows. And
Mm.
so here's one of the biggest things I think is, make sure you get sunlight. Like 20 minutes of sunlight, not with sunglasses on, but sunlight. I don't
Yes.
mean stare at the sun. I just mean be out when it's daylight,
Yes.
without any kind of protection on your eyes. Why? Because it increases the serotonin in your brain, which is what makes you happy. And I
Yes.
would argue that in my opinion, that's probably what's going on with a lot of people now, and for sure last year, because we were all closed in, locked down, right? And
Yeah.
nobody was exercising because there was no gyms open, and heaven forbid people go outside. But I'll tell you, I saw more people outside during 2020 than I ever have in my life.
Yeah.
And it is so vitally important that people understand how important that sunlight is and how it can change the neurochemicals in your brain.
All right, everyone. I am so excited to bring this man who's sitting virtually in front of me, to you guys. I've known him for 6 months now. He has helped me a great deal in, getting clarity about what I wanted to do with my life outside the IT business, and not only helped me get that clarity, but he also was the CEO. He was like chief encouragement officer. He encouraged me in, to do things, go and try, and not just think, and overthink and not do it. So I'm so glad to bring him there. And the one thing you're going to love about him is that whatever he's going to talk about, he's going to give you examples from his life. He's done it, whether it's failing, succeeding. He's done it all. Like anything you can think of that comes out of his mouth, he has done it. He will not say something he hasn't done himself. So welcome, Corey. And thank you, brother, for doing this.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. I really am looking forward to this.
Amazing. So we'll jump right into it. How about, for the audience, you share a little bit about your journey from your background, like how your childhood to your, early career start and how you pivoted into entrepreneurship.
Sure. So, do we have 3 days? I'm just kidding.
I wish.
It's interesting. I grew up in, upper middle class family. We lived in a nice neighborhood, but I will tell you that, I was a fat kid, and that was a big part of my life. And I was 12 years old, and I remembered like it was yesterday. These 3 girls were sitting at the end of the pool. I jumped off the diving board. I got out. They asked me to do it again. In my mind, I'm thinking, they think I'm cute. And so I go in to do it again, and they asked me to do it again. And I thought for sure at this point, definitely thought I was cute. And the reality was, before I got to the diving board that 3rd time, they asked me if I'd ever considered wearing a training bra. And so it was devastating. I'll be honest with you. It tore my confidence to shreds. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. And I realized, and I'm glad it happened. I am really glad it happened. It was very uncomfortable at the time, but I made a choice at that moment. I'll never go through that again. And so that summer, I went on a diet. I started exercising. And to this day, I've never gained that weight back. No. And that was almost 30 years ago.
Wow.
So that's a really small portion of me as a child. Now, if you move forward, I partied in high school a little bit. I partied like crazy in college. Wasn't successful there. I was successful at partying. Wasn't successful at finishing college.
Mm.
And I learned. It's interesting because I learned to sell, which is what I do. I work with entrepreneurs and business owners, and I create sales processes. I help them flush out their sales team, or lots of times it's something has to do with the owner himself or herself,
Yeah.
right? So I learned early on, probably 5 years old, I would go out and I would hunt golf balls because we lived on a golf course. And
Mm-hmm.
I would go hunt golf balls and I would clean them in the ball washer and I would take them down to the sporting goods store and I would sell them. So my entrepreneurship, if you want to call it that, at the time, it was, I was making money at 5. And so it kind of just snowballed into this desire to continue making money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. I've worked at an actual job since I was 15 years old, meaning that's where I started.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll fast forward a little bit. I got out of college, or finished up my stint in college, and decided to go into. Actually, I went and I followed. I went to the Republican National Convention, and the reason I went to the Republican National Convention is because a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, was John Edwards' right-hand man. So he asked me if I wanted to go because he knew a guy there that would go, and he would go to the convention and he would sell memorabilia to Democrats, and he would sell memorabilia to the Republicans, right? In one side of the bag, it would have I hate Republicans. The other side would have I hate Democrats, right? And you just pick and choose. It was a hustle, dude. It was crazy, and it was a really cool experience. And by that time, to give you guys just a little idea of I'd been in trouble, right? I'd already gotten 2 DUIs. I'd lost my license. And so I went on this journey, right? And then the guy that owned the store, it was called American Political Americana, I believe was the name of it. And he asked me if I wanted to go follow Al Gore. Maybe that was I can't remember if that was 2000 or 2004. I think it was 2004. I can't remember what year it was. I went two different times. And so I did. I went and followed Al Gore on his bus tour. And we sold memorabilia to the people there. Well, that was, it was interesting, right? Most people can't say they followed, one of the presidential candidates around for months. And so when that gig ended, I went back to school. And once again, I fell right back into selling drugs and doing drugs. And this is the interesting part. And this is where intuition, this is where your gut comes in. So I had this really funny feeling that something was just not right. And I was living in an apartment with another gentleman. He was my roommate. And I don't know what it was. It was just that gut feeling, right? I don't know how to explain it. And something said, you got to get out of here. Something's not right. And I kid you not. I got on a train to Las Vegas, which was a mistake because, Lord have mercy, 5 days straight. And sure enough, by the time I got to Las Vegas, one of our other friends overdosed in my apartment and died. And so, I mean, like that was, and he wasn't a good friend of mine. I knew him, but he wasn't I hate that he died, but like I wasn't like his best friend. But the point is that I dodged a major bullet. Because, I mean, I can't even imagine what could have happened to me. So after that, Las Vegas was a complete and utter shit show. And, because it's Las Vegas. What do you expect, right? I mean, and so after Vegas, I moved back in with my dad, and then I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and I started working here. I started my first business I've had several, but profitable. My first one was I opened a training studio, a personal training studio, and I sold that business and opened up a med spa. And that's where the next, let's just call it the next chapter of my life started. And it was a really hard time in my life because I had lost what I thought was going to be forever. I had and when I say lost, I could go into the details. I don't mind doing that, but I won't bore you with that. But my partner and I had a disagreement about the fact we were in debt, and he was screwing a girl that I fired. So there was a massive problem there. So I got out from under that mess, and but the flip side of that is I got out with nothing. I didn't owe anything. I didn't owe that $350. He took on the debt, but I also didn't. Nothing. Like I'd sold my other business previously, right? So to open this one, and I was lost. I was super, super, super lost, and that's where microdosing psychedelics came in, and I started microdosing mushrooms. And when I say microdose, extremely, extremely low, like not to the point that you feel anything. You're not tripping out, or you're not acting weird, or anything like that. But what it did do is it brought me out of that depression. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with depression, but it's a real thing. It's a really hard. It's like you're trapped in your brain and in your body, and sometimes you just don't even feel like you can move. So, and now I've got my coaching business. I've got a couple of other businesses. We can talk about that a little bit later. And that's a snapshot. I could go into grave detail about a lot of things on there. So if there is something you want me to go into detail about, fire away.
Yeah. The first I would ask you is when did you know sales were your gift? Like this is something, obviously you started at 5 years old, and you continued with different areas of your journey into businesses. But when did you know this is gold for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I've always been able to communicate in a way to get the outcome that I was looking for. And I don't mean manipulation. I don't mean that. What I'm saying is, if you understand a sales process, if you understand how to communicate with the other side, let's just call you being the other side right now. If you're the person I'm trying to sell to or do business with, I need to understand how you feel. I need to understand how you feel about what I'm talking about, and I need to put myself in your shoes. And if I can do that, I've always been able to do a pretty good job of that. So therefore, I usually excel in whatever I'm selling or whatever I'm doing around sales. Now, I will tell you, interestingly, I didn't necessarily know I should be coaching on sales because I'd done it for so long. And to be honest with you, I really did believe that everybody knew what I did about sales. And then I started getting into it with people, meaning I started getting into the dynamics of sales. And the truth is, people don't have a clue.
Yeah.
So that was a long-winded answer, but.
No. And it takes me right into it, which is, there is this huge bubble or negative connotation associated with sales, and I understand, there have been people who manipulate and take advantage, and that you'll find in every industry, every kind of culture, work, and relationship. But that, I guess, mental block, if we call it that people have around sales, that's what stops. What is it about sales that that people think negatively, that you can maybe give a different perspective as a person who has done sales for so long and coaches sales, that can allow them to see it differently?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. So the first thing that I would say is the biggest thing that stops anybody in sales is fear. And I know it sounds very simple, but at the end of the day, if you think about, let's just say you're not in sales, and you're not in sales, like you're in,
No.
IT and so on and so forth. So by default, and we'll just, if it's okay, I'll just use you as an example.
Yes.
Most people that are in IT services or computer services or anything that has to do with working behind a desk and not talking a lot, there's an even greater fear of actually having to speak to someone. And the reality is that fear is something that most of the time is in your head. And what I mean by that is we think that, well, if I call this person to sell them whatever it is, they're going to hate my guts. They're going to think I'm the worst person in the world. They're also probably going to cuss me out, and they're probably going to hang up on me. Those are the thoughts that go through every person's brain that ever has to do a sale. Now, that thought doesn't go through their brain all the time, but for a lot of people it does. And guess what? Yeah. There are days, there are times, maybe it's a really big deal for me. Maybe it's a $50,000 price tag, and that makes me a little bit nervous going into it. Now, not nervous enough that I'm not going to make the call, because guess what? If you don't make the call, you sure as hell are not going to get the answer.
Yes.
And so it's okay for people not to do business with me. I'm cool with that. Like, at the end of the day, if you feel like I'm not a good fit for you, then most likely we're not going to be a good fit. And I'm okay with that. I'd rather you tell me that than tell me, yeah, this is great, and then I never hear from you again.
Yeah.
Right? I don't like that. I don't enjoy that. So the way I get around that is I ask, most people want to say yes to everything. And I'll give you an example. So I like this, and this is not mine. I took this from Chris Voss because he is a master at it. But what I like to ask the question, would it be a ridiculous idea that we move forward with this podcast? Your answer to that is going to be no. It would not be a ridiculous idea. We're on a podcast, so no, it wouldn't be ridiculous. But what I've found, and this is so interesting, I was just telling my wife this 2 days ago. I said, usually when I ask that no-oriented question, people don't answer no. If we take the question I just asked you, you would say, oh, well, yeah, Corey, we should be on the podcast. Most people will answer, even though I ask a question to get a no, they'll give me the answer I want, but it's in yes form. And so either way, I win, but I'm still trying to nail this down to where I could just get somebody to say no. And I've yet to do it. I get the answer I want, but I don't get to know. So I guess the point is you get the answer you want. So fear is one of the biggest things that holds people back, and the illusion of what's going to happen, or the illusion of what's going to happen next. All right, I've talked to Manpreet. We're going to do the deal. I know he's certain. We do the deal, and then fear sets in. What if I can't do the next deal? What if my pipeline goes dry? What if? Instead, just pick up the phone and make the call.
Yeah. That's true. And it reminds me when we were talking a few months back, and you were helping me figure out or narrow down to my gift areas or what my genius is. And one of the things we were talking about meditation, and I remember you asked me, what can you talk about? And I was like, meditation. And then immediately my mind went into that fear that you're talking, and I was like, but I only doing it for 6 months. And your answer was, if you remember, that you're still ahead of somebody who has not done it even once. that sort of took the fear away. So I love how you're able to reframe those same things, but in a way that there's no fear there anymore.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, and again, I did this for the longest time. I thought everybody knew what I did about sales. And then just until I really started working with different businesses and understanding that people don't even know the fundamentals. They don't even know the basics of it. And so I'll be honest, when I first started working with businesses, I would go in teaching stuff that that I really like talking about, which is about 10 steps ahead of everybody else. And I wondered, well, why is it this is not landing the way I want it to? And the reason is because I was on step 10 and they were on step -1.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So if you were to get maybe 1 or 2 steps of somebody who is in the, technical role, sitting behind the desk, has some aspirations, thinking whether I could do sales or not, what could such a person do to just explore whether it's for them or not?
That's a great question. And I will give you the secret sauce. And it's going to be slightly uncomfortable for people, but this is the way you get over being uncomfortable is role play. Even if it's with your wife, if it's with your buddy, if it's with your coach, if it's whoever it's with, doesn't matter. But if you think about it, I'm going to give you this analogy. And I want you to think about Tom Brady. Everybody knows who Tom Brady is. Everybody knows he's arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks on the planet.
Yeah.
And so do you think that Tom Brady goes out on the football field on Sunday and runs a play that he hasn't practiced? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
He is not going to do that because he hasn't practiced it. He's a professional. He's an expert. Experts practice. Michael Jordan, he would shoot 1,000 free throws every single day. He's Michael Jordan. He didn't have to shoot 1,000 free throws, but guess what? He put in the practice, and that way when he got to the game, he knew when it left his hand exactly where it was going to go.
Yeah.
And that's just like sales.
Yes. Practice.
Well, let me be clear on something really quick. But don't practice on your customers because that is a waste of time, waste of customer, and quite frankly, you're probably going to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Do it with somebody that's not going to give you money.
Yeah, and also give you the false negative in the sense that you will hurt yourself and then you're thinking you're not good at all because you're just inexperienced, but you're using that inexperience as a excuse to not do it anymore. So I love that head on, to not do it. I wanted to go back into, the time you mentioned that you were in depression because of, losing the business, building a business, building it good, selling it, and then getting into second business that, probably was, as you mentioned, the hardest period of your life. And specifically because I understand, I mean, I don't know if I've been in depression, like I have sometimes, but nothing that I can relate to you. But I also know there are a lot of people that are there and they feel captivated by it. They are captivated, but they also do not have a way to let it out, vent it out, or give it an outlet in some form or shape. And the people around cannot help either. Like I remember, and this is where me comes in. I had my sister, and she was in depressive state, and unfortunately, as siblings, we could never understood that, and we were far. She was back in India, And growing up, initially, it was because we didn't have examples, we didn't have that empathy, what a depression could do. And it's unfortunate that I can understand, or I have at least, I'm open to try to understand now, but she's there no more. Like we lost her earlier this year, but I know there are people who need help, and this is why I'm taking you in that. So if you can shed some light, like how it felt and what are some things that they should think differently that can help them get out of it, or maybe.
Yeah. That's a great question. Here's the deal. First, I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you my experience.
Yes.
My experience is sometimes, being in a depressive state is very uncomfortable because you don't know how to explain how you feel. You don't feel like you can do anything. You don't feel like you can go to work. You don't feel like you can make a difference. You don't feel like anything. And everything is almost like it's like a loop. If your brain says I can't do XYZ, the body typically follows. And so here's one of the biggest things I think is, make sure you get sunlight, like 20 minutes of sunlight, not with sunglasses on, but sunlight. I don't mean stare at the sun. I just mean be out when it's daylight, without any kind of protection on your eyes. Why? Because it increases the serotonin in your brain, which is what makes you happy. And I would argue that in my opinion, that's probably what's going on with a lot of people now, and for sure last year, because, we were all closed in, locked down, right? And nobody was exercising because there was no gyms open, and heaven forbid people go outside. But I'll tell you, I saw more people outside during 2020 than I ever have in my life.
Yeah.
And it is so vitally important that people understand how important that sunlight is and how it can change the neurochemicals in your brain from a negative to a positive. The other thing is eat healthy food, right? And move. You've got to move your body, or you probably won't climb out of it. And I don't recommend, I shouldn't be recommending anything around this, but I'll tell you, for years, I was on an antidepressant. And I realized, I don't even know what made me realize, but something made me realize, maybe I ran out and I just didn't get it filled. I can't remember exactly what made me stop taking it, but I decided, either way, I stopped taking the antidepressant and my life got exceedingly better. Because I believe that antidepressants do their job, hence the words antidepressant. Well, let me back up. I actually don't think they do their job. I think they numb you out, and I think that you're just kind of existing. You're not there. There's very little excitement. There's very little like super deep depression, right? But it's just kind of an even. There's no personality. It's weird. And so I understand some people have to have it. I get that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be my first go-to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand, like, yes, we both are not doctors, but knowing what I know from my experience with the people, I think one of the things people have, people who are in depression, but people who are related to those people, their friends and family, is this stigma. Like when people do not talk about it, like I was talking to somebody and they were mentioning about somebody in their relation who's going through depression, and they're trying to hide. I was like, do not hide. Do not be ashamed of it. There's nothing to be ashamed. It is a health condition, and you have to talk. You have to take it just like you would take if you had a problem with your heart. Like you would talk and tell people and let it out. And I think that's what I find is that your experience?
I would say that is, and I think a lot of people don't really come out and talk about it because of it. Kind of goes back to the sales example. It's the fear of judgment.
Yeah.
It's the fear of worrying about what other people think. And I'd like to just share one more quick thing on that in particular.
Yeah.
I didn't really mention this a moment ago, but in 2020, I went and I did 2 ayahuasca journeys. Now, for those that are listening that may not know what ayahuasca is, it's an Amazonian tea that has DMT properties to it. DMT hits the pineal gland and takes you to a different dimension. What it also does is opens your third eye. The reason I wanted to bring that up is because I remember specifically the first, and they call it downloads, and I don't know exactly. Maybe it'll make sense after I finish, but so when you get this powerful thought, and it's almost like somebody standing beside of you that's telling you this thought, right? And it's that powerful, and it's kind of shocking because it hits you like, whew, hard, meaning the thought. And so what I realized in that second journey that I did so there's 3 journeys in each time I went down. And so the second time that I took the tea or took the ayahuasca, I was in this closed in like outside area, and there was people laughing, there was people crying, there was people flailing around, acting crazy, and I looked around and I'm like, what in the hell? Like, is it not working? And it was like you and I talking right here, and it was a voice that said, that's your problem. You compare yourself to everybody else. You're not here for them. You're here for you. Focus on you. You've done this all your life. It's just like you and I talking. And that was extremely powerful for me because I didn't want to accept it. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really think of myself as that person. But that's absolutely what was happening. And so since then, I don't do that anymore. I try not to do that anymore. Not as much for sure, because I'm aware.
Yes. Yes. And those of you who do not know about ayahuasca, it's a plant medicine, and it's like Corey said, it comes from Amazonian. It's a whole ceremony. It's you have to do it with the people.
The shaman.
Shamans, and there's also all kinds of shamans, good and bad. Usually you need to find through somebody with referenceable, and also I think there is a calling. That's what I've heard, like you are called to it. You cannot just say, okay, it's not a experimental or a something to do for fun. It just calls you, and you go, and there's tons of information available online for this, and it's suddenly becoming mainstream. Like more and more people are talking about these journeys. I hear this, but this is why I was saying that what Corey is going to bring from experience. You heard him talk about as a 5-year old kid and going to jobs, to the business, doing all these journeys, depression, everything he has about him is real, and this is why I love. So going on to now, after all those journeys and every sort of thing that one could experience in life, and now, you're doing sales coaching with the companies, and as we were talking offline, you're about to, or you just recently launched a group sales program for individuals also. So talk me, like, how do you work with companies, and how do you work with the groups? Like, what is it that they get out working with you?
Sure. So at the end of the day, there's one reason, and typically one reason only, that people work with me, and that's to grow their revenue, to make more money, right? I mean, that's the whole goal of the program, is for you, whoever's in it, to make significantly more money than when they came in. And so one of the ways that we do that is we go through our confidence to close, right? We do some of our other steps are effective follow-up, successful prospecting, confidence to close. Did I already say that? I don't think I did. Did I already say that?
Yes, it's
Oh,
all
I
right.
did already say that. Yeah. So there's several steps. I won't bore you with all of them, but at the end of the day, what it does is it helps the confidence big time, because it matters when you go into a conversation with a prospect. It matters if you have the framework available in your brain to go through the checklist or the sales process. It's really important because it gives you the confidence that maybe you wouldn't already have. If you have
Mhm.
a point A to point B structure, I guarantee you're going to be more successful without a shadow of a doubt. And a lot of people don't realize they have a process when they do sales. They've never really broken it down. They just kind of wing it. And I'll be honest, if you just wing it, you're probably not going to be super successful. But if you
Yeah,
have a certain framework that you go by, if there's a certain step that you know is the next step, then you're confident you're going to be able to close the deal. And my goal is to help people not go in thinking I'm going to close the deal, because if you're thinking about I'm going to close the deal, you're not thinking about what the customer really needs. You're thinking about
yeah,
what you need. You're thinking about the BMW, or thinking about the new house or whatever, and that's the wrong, and that's why people get a bad name in sales. You mentioned that earlier. There's a stigma, and that's why, because people get into sales for the money and the money only. Guess
yeah.
what? I was that guy for the longest time. And
Mm,
guess
mm,
what? I was never as successful as I am now, because I don't, granted, there's a monetary value to it, of course. That's why we all work. That's why we
yeah,
run business. That's why we do our whatever we do. But that's not the only intention. The intention is I want to make sure that you get in a better spot, a much better spot than where you started. And
yeah.
that's my goal. And
Mm.
so I would say I've been pretty successful at that.
I know that firsthand. So, uh, just to give, if you were to give one tip out of 1,000 tips you have, like in building the confidence that you help people build, because that is, as you mentioned, is the big part of learning how to get better at sales. What would that be like? What could you tell our audience to do, getting better in the, building the confidence?
So I'll tell you, so I'll build on what I mentioned earlier, which is role play. The easiest
Yeah,
way to do this, and let's just take somebody who's a little bit shy, or maybe really shy, right?
yeah,
I don't, let's just take that person for example, because a lot of people think that extroverts are the only people in sales, but I disagree with that,
hmm,
because, and let's just call it introverts just for the sake of the conversation. Um, introverted, excuse me, introverted individuals that get into sales are very successful. The reason is because people don't see that coming. They don't see somebody that has an outward shy appearance. They don't expect them to be in sales. And so it's almost like a sniper. The other thing, the tip that I'll give you is this. Everybody listening to this has a phone. Take the
yeah,
camera out of the phone and practice in front of the phone on video. That does multiple things. One, it gets you better on video. Two,
yeah.
you see what you look like, or you could do it on Zoom as well, or a computer if you want to do it there. But the phone's the easiest. You could do that in your car. You could do it in wherever. You don't have to do it
Mm,
in front of somebody. And that is what's going to stop somebody from role playing, is the fact they've got to do it with another human being. So
mhm.
just take that completely out of the picture, pull out your phone, iPhone or Android, whatever you got, and just start recording what it is you want to say. And if you do that over and over, you don't have to do anything with the videos. Over and over and over, your confidence will gain exponentially.
Mm, yeah, yeah. It just reminded that, doing over and over, it reminded me a quote from Bruce Lee, and he said, "I don't fear a man who practices 1,000 kicks one at a time. I fear a man who practices same kick 1,000 times, right? So it's doing over and over again, and it's so on the point that it does give you confidence. I mean, think of it, anything you get good at is just by repetition.
Well, if you think about,
Awesome.
man, if you think about when you were in school, and let's just take way earlier in school, and you memorized whatever it was you had to take the test on.
Yes.
Oh, right. So you went into it knowing that you had the information because you practiced it, you memorized it, and you went in and you did great on the test. Now let's take the person that doesn't do that, and they're probably not going to do near as well as the person who memorized the information.
True. That brings me to, I'm going to ask one more question and then we're going to wrap up because I know you have other things to manage. You have a big day ahead. So one last thing, somebody, whether it's an individual or a company, right? When you are somebody who's sitting behind the desk doing those jobs, you have your talents, your hardcore skills there, but you still have aspirations to do more. Or as a company owner, you want to leverage your people, do more, not just sit behind the desk. What could they do in terms of, should people be just investing in them in their hardcore trade skills, or do you see any value in companies and individual investing in themselves into soft skills like learning sales, learning marketing, whatever it may be the case for them to get to the next? How do you see, especially because you work both with individuals and the companies?
So here's the thing. Like, I think that my answer would be the soft skills, because I believe that if you can communicate effectively, you
Yes.
can do just about anything. Now, if you can't communicate effectively, for example, I don't know if I've said it on here or not, but lots of times I'll say, do you see what I'm saying? And so if I hear you say that, that tells me you're a visual learner. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, I hear what you're saying, that tells me you're an auditory learner. If you say,
Yes.
I feel what you're saying, that means you're a kinesthetic learner. Why is this important? Because if you're auditory and I'm a visual learner, I speak in visual terms, you're going to miss part of it because you're not a
Yes.
visual learner, right? And it's like me, I'm a more visual learner. It's like if I listen to an audiobook, I'm probably going to have to listen to it twice. But if I watch a video on it, I guarantee I won't have to watch it but one time. But because
Yeah.
that visual aid is not there, I miss part of the information. And so that's
Yes.
key. It's so important, because if you think about that, if you think about being able to communicate the way the person you're trying to talk to can understand, rate's going to skyrocket. It's going to skyrocket.
So true, and so true. Bringing those, understanding your people. I mean, I didn't even know about myself. Like I'm more auditory. Like I have visual aspect, but the majority of it is auditory. And when when coaches and people, mentors, books would say, okay, visualize on your dreams. Like I could not. And then I noticed when I visualize, I'm actually not visualizing. I'm hearing the sounds. Like I'm hearing the claps or people announcing my name or whatever it is, but I'm more auditory. And as I learn that, I can amplify that game of focusing on hearing rather than visual, and that is same in sales. Like you have to understand about other people, but I think if you understand about yourself also, that also helps a great deal. Good. That was tons of gold there. You shared about everything, and we touched about tons of things. From from a 9 to 5er to entrepreneur to person who may be feeling down and depression, but I hope this gives them hope. And where can people find you, Corey, if they want to work, they want to know more about your work? How can they find you?
Sure. So on practically all the social channels, it's just at Corey Berrier. And then So I've got a couple of companies that I'd like to talk about or just mention, which Sales CEO is my coaching group and my coaching company. And then we also have a company called Automated Deals. And what we do with that is we book appointments for solar companies. We also book appointments for other industries, but right now primarily is solar because there's so many people out there selling leads that are worthless or they're fake or the numbers are wrong or the names are wrong and it's just a scam. Lots of times it's a scam. And when I got really tired of talking to tradesmen and people in the trades about how much money they had spent on marketing, crazy marketing stuff and crazy leads. And so we figured out a way to make this work for them where they wouldn't have to spend a lot of money out of pocket and they're guaranteed the appointments. So it's really going to be a massive success. And so far we've done very well with it. And we've only been doing this for, I don't know, month and a half. And we've already got 2 companies under our belt that we're working with.
Yeah. Amazing. So, and go on. No, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, you can just find me at CoreyBerrier.com is where you can find the website.
Yeah, I'll put the links in with the episode so people can find you. Anybody who wants, whether you're a company owner who wants to improve and see what Corey and his company can do for sales for your business, increasing revenue, or you're somebody who wants to grow your sales individual, you're a salesperson or a technical person and you want to earn more money, I think you definitely should reach out to Corey. My experience with Corey has been great. Like he gives you advice. He's not there just to make money. He's going to, like he said, when it makes sense to do business or to do deal win-win situation, that's all he is about. So do that. And thank you, Corey, for, giving me your time and being here with my audience, and really appreciate. I learned a lot of good things and something that I didn't even know about you. And I think I'm one step more closer to you as a friend now than before the interview.
Well, and the last thing I'd like to give the audience the opportunity, they can go to CoreyTheSalesCEO.com and to download my Objection Crusher cheat sheet. This will really help people, especially if we're talking about people that don't know how to handle objections. It's a really good roadmap that should be massively beneficial for most everybody, especially people that are not in sales. So I just thought I'd tell you that it's free, doesn't cost you a single penny. Go download it, enjoy it, use it, and that's all.
Great, awesome. Thank you for that. I'll put that also link in there. So thank you again. I'll see you soon again.
You got it. Thank you.
All right. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did and got some valuable nuggets out of it. If you liked it, there are other shows you can watch. They're exactly what you need. And I ask you to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the show. Really, I want to hear from you firsthand, what you felt, what you liked, what you didn't like. So thank you and see you around.